Visit Avery.com, Avary, for the most up-to-date news and information on Team Avery.
Avery, 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 Avery,
This is The Gala Show. I'm your reporter on the beat, Gala Avery. On this episode, you may know my guest as the founder of Beyond Art, the former strategic advisor to the UNESCO ambassador on matters of culture, an esteemed art curator who specializes in contemporary art, or as the founder of the Malibu Art Collectors Club. But here on The Gala Show, I know her as the only woman I dance a silent disco with, Larissa Kolesnikova. Hey, Larissa.
Hi, Gala. That was such a great introduction. Yeah, silent disco is a thing.
It is a thing. I did not know it was a thing. And then Larissa introduced me to it. And I did not dance the silent disco that time, but I will dance the next one with you. So
Great. I'm excited about that.
So before we bring up the topic for today, I have a question for you. So I know from our conversations that you were from St. Petersburg.
Yes.
And that you grew up in the Soviet Union.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, because you are a creative yourself, and as we're going to get into it, art, etc., I wanted to ask you, how did growing up in the Soviet Union change what kind of culture you absorbed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thinking back, now that I lived half of my life abroad, growing up in Soviet Union seems like really cool when I look back.
Well, because you grew up in the Soviet Union, and then you lived in Dubai for a very long time, and you're very global all over Europe, and then you've been here in Los Angeles for a very long time.
Yes.
But I know from our email that you had one movie in particular that you saw in the Soviet Union that really affected you, which was
Some Like It Hot.
Yeah.
I love that film, and it's interesting actually. It does make me reflect on the childhood in Soviet Union. It's interesting. I also lived in Germany. I studied in Germany. Yes, and it's true. Like first 24 years of my life, I lived in Russia, which was then not all those years. It was Soviet Union, but to the large extent. While I was at school, it was. When I went to university, the Soviet Union collapsed. I was 16 years old at the time. But yeah, that film is really, when you asked me to talk to you, and I was thinking what comes first to me is something that I remember about Hollywood and growing up in Soviet Union, and that film is really to this day something that really inspires me. And I remember as a child watching it, and I think as a grown woman, I can look at it in different ways and see what resonated with me as a child and what still resonates me. I still watch it every year. At least few times a year.
And does your son love it too?
Oh my gosh, that's a separate story. Yes, my kids like it too. I have two sons, right? So they both like it.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good they like your favorite movies. So.
Yeah.
So now, as always, my guest gets to bring their topic to the mic. Mm-hmm. Larissa, why don't you tell us what your topic is and why you decided to choose it?
Well, I think we can talk about inspiration. I think inspiration is something that is important in life. As a creative person, I work with art and art collectors, artists, and various people who are involved in the arts. And I think film is incredible, very potent art medium. And I think that kind of ties it together. But before we get into the topic, it's time for a commercial break.
Back by popular demand, the Video Archives merch store is up and running. Get your favorite t-shirts, hats, notebooks, stickers, and more at videoarchivesmerch.com. You know me. I write all my notes in the Notes on Cinema notebook, the Gala edition, of course. Check out videoarchivesmerch.com to get yours today.
Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals.
That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch. And the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and Avocado Ranch. Chicken experts since 1990. Chicken taco experts since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
Hey, thanks so much for being a loyal listener. If you want to keep up with me off mic, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Gala Avery.
And we're back.
So you heard it here. We are going to be talking about inspiration. I have 30 minutes on the clock and our time starts now. So Larissa, where do you get your inspiration from?
Wow.
I know that's a broad question.
It's a broad question. I think I'm a person who is easily inspired. As you noticed, I asked to sit here in front of a window. I think like as a kid, I always liked to sit by the window and I like to look out at things. They can be anything from plants to art to sky. I think I find inspiration anywhere. I'm one of those people, I don't have to look far for it. But overall, I think nature, interesting humans, conversation, artwork, film can be really a wonderful way to get inspired.
Yeah, so I met Larissa through Soho House, and we met at a members mixer and then kind of have just mingled together ever since. But a lot of people know that I go to my guests' homes a lot of time to do their interviews, and when I stepped into Larissa's home, it is so artistic, and it is so a representation, honestly, of you, like of your spirit and of yourself. Like all the furniture is colored, different shapes. Like you're not afraid of color, which is one thing I love. And also your fashion. I know you're not afraid of color.
Thank you.
You always have such a unique sense of style.
Well, thank you so much.
Do you think you gather like inspiration and express yourself through it? Like through your style, through your art, or is it something that you kind of gain inspiration from, if that makes sense? Like when you look at this piece of art, there's a light sculpture on the wall that I really love. It's like this rainbow light sculpture. Do you get inspiration from it?
Yeah.
Or is it just something you like?
It's definitely an inspiring piece of art. I've been living with it for some years. I'm actually curating a show for this artist.
Oh, really?
It will be here
In
LA,
Malibu?
in Malibu, actually, in Pepperdine Museum. And it's going to open next Freeze LA, and it will be a solo exhibition for this artist. He's based in Manila.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is how deep inspiration grows in my life.
You're an art curator.
I'm curator advisor, so and I'm
how
also
did
a
you-
business owner, entrepreneur. I think I always put curators, advisors, those like kind of key characteristic to what I do in terms of the craft. But I do many things. Through my life, I've done many things.
How did you get into this?
Oh gosh,
Like, did you study this in school?
that's a long question. Also.
It's like, tell me your entire life story.
Yeah. Well, I studied literature actually, so which is also another inspiring topic in St. Petersburg State University, and from there, literature and languages. And from there, so I was very young when I went to school, 16. I left my parents' home and went to university. When the Soviet Union collapsed, it was quite a dramatic year and dramatic change in my life.
And can you imagine your son doing that? Because I know he's 15. Can you imagine he's just like, bye?
I'm not ready for that. Do not. This is funny. No. And so I left for university, which was still Soviet Union. While I was getting accepted to university, the Soviet Union collapsed. So I went to university and now to a different country with a city with a different name. From Leningrad, it changed to St. Petersburg. So it is interesting timing, right, in life. But in terms of how I arrived at art, I think I liked art always since I was a child. Where I was growing up, it was limited amount of art available. But my mom and dad always were very, they loved the nature. I lived in a very beautiful place on the coast of Black Sea, similar kind of to Malibu in terms of topography, where we had beautiful mountains, beautiful sea, beautiful plants. And I think the nature was my first artist that I encountered on a daily basis. So when I was in St. Petersburg around age 18, I met a sculptor I can't remember how we met. I think it was an introduction by a friend, or maybe my mom introduced us. I can't remember now. But anyway, he introduced me to a bunch of other artists who were living and working in St. Petersburg at the time. And those artists were really important for St. Petersburg and for actually Russian art in general. Looking back as a very young adult, I didn't know that, or I couldn't foresee their importance then, but I really felt it was something that I was really deeply interested in. So every day, or when I could after university lectures, or when I was done with my homework, I would go and hang out in this particular place. It was called Pushkinskaya 10. That was a place where artists resided. They had their studios. There were musicians, there were sculptors, there were painters, variety of artists. And I became quite close with close friends with many artists, and that became my daily activity for, go hang out with the studio with the artist, have interesting conversations, watch them work, and I think to this day it remains to be one of my favorite things to do. Yeah. So I think that's how art, came into my life in a very raw form, in a sense that I could see how artists live, what it's about, what kind of vocation it is, how hard it was, especially in the 90s. And the group of artists that I became really close with, Andrei Medvedev, Timur Novikov, Oleg Kotelnikov, these people were really phenomenal people, very kind-hearted. They were also all friends. So in art, so for example, in my space, I always am very mindful of how I present their work in a space, for example, this artist, Timur Novikov, I collect his work. He passed away now. These two of the artists I mentioned, they passed away, and they were friends, and they liked their work to be seen together. And one of them became really, really famous, and another one not so much. But to me, it doesn't really matter, because that's also how life unfolds sometimes. But the significance of the work of all of them is so important. So in my space, I didn't give you a tour of my collection.
I'll get a tour after.
But I'm saying it's important that the dynamic between individuals is important to me. So because their work, I feel in art, to understand an artwork, you really communicate with the essence of the artist. I think that to me is what art is. And that's why it's so beneficial to live with art, because we experience the frequency of the soul of the human. So it's really kind of the highest product to me of human creativity, what we can do with our hands and create with mind and hands, right, in a very special state, because art does not appear from mundane state of presence. So that's what's really interesting to me.
Yeah, that was like the raw form. I loved one thing that you said was that nature was the first artist that you were introduced to. 100%. I think I've never heard anyone put it like that. And I think that's such a special way to do it, because where I draw most of my inspiration from for my writing is I love going on canyon drives. And I'll put my top down on my car and I'll drive through the canyon and I'll see the nature and I'll smell it and I'll absorb it. And it gives me so much inspiration. Like that's truly, as an adult, where I draw my inspiration from is nature. And so to hear you say that nature is the first artist you encountered, that's a really profound thought. Because it's true every day. It's like the paintbrush has been painted, the sky is there.
Yes.
And you see in all like landscape portraiture, it's like you draw inspiration from others, from the places you grow up. Those two artists that you mentioned, that one became famous and one maybe did not become as much. Do you present their art together in your own home, like side by side?
Yes, I mean, I change how my works are hung. Sometimes, like, you want to see some works and then some need to go get some rest. Yes, mostly I do, and I'm very mindful, because it is my friend who was less famous than the first. He was my dearest friend, and was probably my biggest teacher. He was the kindest person I knew, and and he actually encouraged me to buy the works of other artists who was famous. He's like, once I was visiting St. Petersburg, he's like, you have to go see the show. Well, did you see the show? You have to buy the work. I was like, okay. But it's interesting that he was so, considerate and And we dated for a while in the past, but that was not as important as our friendship. And really, I always considered him to be my teacher. And I really like how ethical he was, I think, in thinking about, and really kind of profound wisdom on life. Yeah, it was very, very interesting human being, and I love his work. And yeah.
What is it about contemporary art specifically that draws you to it?
Well, that's a great question. And I love this question when people ask it, because I say, what's really most profound thing about contemporary art, that you have the privilege of talking to the artist. Like you and me, we can talk, and I can ask our artist question: what's this artist about? What are you concerned in life? What are you really? What are you putting forward? What are you? Why is artist creating? Everyone comes from a different input. I think every artist, some create, because they're constantly inspired, or they have the sensibility about the world that needs to be expressed. Some are driven by personal trauma or some profound experience. It's very different for every artist, I feel. So I think the conversation is the privilege that we can have when collecting contemporary art.
That's amazing, because I'd never even considered that. I guess the conversation with an artist when you own one of their
100%.
pieces.
Yes.
I collect, like, art wise, I collect animation cells, and I collect them from this director Ralph Bakshi, who's known for his cell shaded rotoscoping. He's like the grandfather of this technique called rotoscoping, where you paint over a film frame, and so you kind of
very
create an
cool.
animation through it. But he's still alive, but it's his son that's selling off his pieces in these different film frames. And so it's interesting, because I never talked to Mr. Bakshi, but his son is very engaged in the discussion about it. And I never really thought of that as kind of an integral part of purchasing a piece, that you are
Yes.
getting to know
It
the
is
artist.
very, very important. I think for me, when I work with collectors, the biggest part is really, especially for new collectors, because older collectors usually already know the drill and they kind of know how to go about it. But whereas a lot of learning is happening with new collectors and educating them about the process, and also the benefits that they can really get from collecting art. To me, it's really expands your life in a sense. Like, a lot of people, art provides kind of a platform of talking about really anything and everything. But you also get to talk to really interesting people who are creative, living from a different perspective, right? People who choose to be singular and maybe having more difficult lives, because it's very challenging to be an artist normally. So I think that's very enriching, and it puts you in a very curious position and approach to life, right? If you're not only collecting objects. And that's why contemporary art becomes really interesting avenue for development, not only of your own life, but you're also in a position to help and assist many artists
That are living.
who are living. Not only you contribute to their livelihood, and that's why I'm a big supporter of intentional collecting. People have not used this term. I consider it's kind of my terminology that I coined. But what I really want people to understand, it really matters how you collect art and how you spend your money, because every decision, like in anything else, right? Like food we eat, it really makes an impact. And in art, so when we're supporting certain artists, it makes a distinction, right? So rather than spending money of maybe a name that is particularly already been known, and that can be also great, money spent on someone who is well known. But also when you're spending on a career, buying a piece of work that you believe in, this artist, you want to support them, you want to make sure this artist is seen, this work is seen, that you're really making a profound impact on someone's life.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually picked my animation cells, and this is funny because I was worried that someone was going to start buying them and destroying them, because it was kind of during cancel culture.
Yeah.
And his work is not politically correct whatsoever. It's cartoon, it's fun, it's wild. It's Scatman Crothers is starring in his movies
Yeah.
as like Brother Rabbit from like
Yeah.
Play on Words. And so I started collecting to protect my art because I was like, I fear the day that this becomes unavailable to watch,
Yeah.
and I fear the day that maybe this gets destroyed. And so that's kind of where I approached when I started collecting my pieces. And that's why I only have 2 of them, because I was like,
It's
this
so
is
personal, right? I mean, what gets us excited about these things and this connection. And in that space, it's also about what effect it makes on art. For example, this work, I remember when I walked in the
the light
exhibition.
piece.
When I walked in that exhibition, it was, again, I knew the artist and a gallery I knew was exhibiting in Dubai. Immediately when I walked in the space, this work really had impacted me. And
I can see why. I mean, I was drawn to it as well when I walked into the space.
yeah, and so I kind of give myself 24 hours, but next day I went and bought it. So I have to sleep on it, I have to say. But if it's something in my field and it has this effect, then I'm like, yeah, I understand it's impacting me, and
And then you further and I'm assuming that was before you were going to set up the art show for the artist.
that was long ago.
That's what
This
I mean.
was-
So it
this
really
was
put an impact on you.
probably, I don't even know, 2010.
Wow. So
14 years ago.
that just shows, though, that you really believe in the artist because you purchased one of the pieces. And
Yeah,
now
I have
you're,
a few works by him now, and we became good friends, and life, goes by, and we're in different corners of the world, but yeah, I still believe in his work. I think he has an important message, and now I'm curating his show.
So if I was a beginner art collector, because you
Yeah.
said part of the thing is that like older art collectors kind of know what they want and they know how it works. How
Yeah.
do you guide someone through that? Because really what you're guiding someone through also is kind of finding their personal style. And I'm super interested in this when I talk about
Yeah.
personal style fashion with someone. Like, how do
Thank
you
you.
cultivate that? Because everyone's personal style is so unique to them.
Oh,
Like, your
right.
style is so unique to you.
Oh,
You
thank
got
you.
like polka dot Birkenstocks on. You got the turquoise, I think it's turquoise earrings.
yes.
You got this like
Good eye.
heart print dress on and a jean jacket. And like, that is so you. I didn't expect anything else when I walked in today.
Thank you,
And I love
Gala.
it.
Yeah, how do I go about that? Yeah, I think the young collector, in terms of young, we don't mean the age, but a person who is new to this. I think what's very important to me too, that a collection is true to this person, right? So I see as advisor or curator, I work as a guide. So so that I help you discover, ask you questions that will help you realize who you are, what matters to you. Just like now, it made you reflect. Like, wait a second, nature is important to me. Wait a second.
Yeah.
And the series of these conversations, this is where most of discovery happens. This is what's really important, because you learn about yourself, what engages you, right? What is important to you, then what artist might be interesting. So for me, I kind of like, I gather this information, and then based on that, what I see, what resonates with you personally, I will say, how about we'll look at this, or maybe let's look at that, and we explore it together. And that assistance gives you confidence, because of course it's nice to work with the expert, a person who understands what would make sense, right? But it's exploration. It's as much yours as it is, for me, my presence. It's like a coach. So I think, and that is really enjoyable process, because I've seen in my collectors, people start and they want to make certain decisions. And then I always say, go with your gut, and sometimes I can see like maybe that was not the best decision, but I'm like, oh, okay, like we'll see. But then like 5 years later, a person's like, why did I buy that? But I'm like, whatever. But you can reflect on these things, and then you can see how you change also in the process.
Yeah, how you change as a person. And
Yeah.
it's also funny because like I have things where I look at it, I'm like, why did I buy that? Like, why did I
Yeah.
spend money on that? But it is because I am a different person now. And through
Sure.
that purchase, maybe I grew or I had an
Yeah.
experience that changed me. When you are guiding someone with art and you're guiding them to find their personal style, if they want to buy something and you just kind of see like it doesn't fit at all with anything else that they have, Is that ever a concern? Like what, like, oh, you collect all like oil paintings and whatever, and then here's like this random, I don't know, art sculpture that
Well, it
like,
depends, right? I mean, it depends how rigid the collector wants to be and wants the collection to be, how coherent. I mean, that's all can be considered. It can be all become a criteria, but doesn't have to be. I think the most important consideration whenever buying a piece of art, if you're buying a singular piece of art, if you're adding to your collection, is first of all, how strong is the work? That is the first question.
so what do you mean by strong?
So what do we mean by strong? So I would say this: if you come in front of the art, you have this is a good test.
Yeah.
If you come in front of the presence of artwork, you don't know anything about this artwork. You don't know the artist. You don't know the importance of it. You don't know anything about the artwork. However, you have your body in front of it. You're experiencing the work as you are. So, for example, you can look at this work. We're looking at this large
giant painting.
It is a giant painting by a German artist, a wonderful artist, Caroline Kropf. So, if you look at this painting, well, now I said the name and I said the wonderful. So, but imagine, like a minute ago, you didn't know that. But it's just because I'm adding what effect it does on me, right? But for you walk in terms of in front of an artwork and you don't know anything about it, but you can measure the impact of influence, what it does for you. Does it make you wonder? Does it strike you in a certain way? Does it make you feel better? Does it make you feel like you want to learn all about this artist? Do you want to see more art by this artist? What is that impact? How do you feel that vibration is really affecting your being?
Are you inspired by it also?
So you feel inspired. So you see, I think like that, the inspiration, the resonance. Sometimes a work can be very strong, can be very negative impact. It doesn't mean that every work will inspire in the same way. A work can be very strong, can be very powerful, can rip your gut out. Mm-hmm. And you have to see like, okay, well, I can really feel this work is doing something to my frequency, to my body. So then you have to kind of process it and understand, is this work, is this something, do I want that influence? Can I be in that presence every day, right? Mm-hmm. If it's something that you're really welcoming, you want more of it, I mean, then you'd say, oh, well, this work might be great for me, right? And then you already will apply some other criteria. But I'm looking for people to experience themselves in front of art. I'm teaching them how to apply those tools so that it's truly their collection, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
And I also love because it's like you really are doing kind of, I don't want to use the word therapy because I don't want to use that word, but it is a self-discovery, self-exploration. You are growing as a person through what you look and also your critical thinking. You're exercising a part of your brain that might not always be exercised. And some people might not be allowed to exercise it, or they might feel like they're not allowed to like, or I've had people say like, I'm not a creative person. I'm not a this, I'm not a that. And it's like, well, actually, even if maybe you're not a painter or you're not a writer or something, like,
It doesn't matter.
by looking at a piece of art, you can be creative, you can come up with it, you can feel it, you can love it.
Yes.
I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely adds a dimension. And plus, latest research, that's a new direction in arts. I mean, new as spoken about and researched, and now finally kind of becoming interesting to many voices. There will be our Basel panel in Basel next week about it, about influence of art on health. So I think that's a very interesting topic and very important to me. I've been interested in this topic for many years. In fact, I have actually a small woman-owned business that is set up that is actually pursuing that and incorporating art across other industries that would assist people, especially in underserved communities, and improve their wellness.
Like in healthcare, etc.
Healthcare, yes. Some institutions have already done it. For example, the Cleveland Clinic, has a massive art collection in Ohio and Abu Dhabi. And there's some other institutions that are implementing it. But it's not only in medical field. So, I mean, medical is definitely, it's very straightforward. But it can be anywhere, in underserved community, in children, senior centers, anywhere.
Even schools, maybe. Yeah.
Schools, yeah, Yeah, because I mean, we understand that creativity is helpful because it helps us unwind. It helps us feel more positive. It helps our hormones. I mean, if you look at people who are old and have collections
Yes.
of art, they're still crips. They don't have dementia.
No.
So it's very interesting topic. So for me, and I mean, people don't really talk about it, but when I talk about it, I do think that the frequency of an artwork is with you. What you bring in your field on a daily basis has huge impact, and art does have a lot of impact on us.
I agree. And also, they've done studies where it's even something as simple as a window in a hospital room
Yes.
will change how someone, and as you said, it's like nature
Yes.
is the first artist. And if someone's able to see something creative and see something, I could totally see that having an impact on their health.
Yes. So that would be my dream if and that's my kind of plan outside of my curatorial and advisory work to work with people in businesses who are understanding this impact and can bring us in to help them impact the environments.
So I wanted to ask you one little question about the Malibu Art Collectors Club, because
yeah.
I know you founded that. So how did that come
Yes.
about?
I think it was during the pandemic, we were also lonely or whatever the word. I mean, I had kids, so I was never lonely.
No,
but
you got them.
But yeah, but I saw that people needed to communicate. And I've been doing talks at Soho houses for a while, even before then, since I moved here really in 2015. But in 2021, I decided, I'm like, well, let me do something that would be more of a platform to help people come and communicate and meet each other, in more informal format. I think Soho House is a place where people like to come. It's casual, it's approachable. I think bringing a sense of community was important to me. Malibu is a unique place for a reason, because we have tremendously beautiful nature. We're an incredible space with the ocean and the mountains. And people kind of, when they come here, they do have a different energy. And I really like that. I think it's palpable. And also, it's a unique place. It's a very small town where we have only about 5,000 people living around the year, even though I think population is 13,000, So
Let's not
I
ask
think
any
during
questions.
the pandemic, more people came to their second and third homes and
Yeah.
started living in Malibu. But what's interesting that this population is really comprised of the most people are artists. I mean, whether entertainment industry, not so much, I mean, visual artists, but a lot of, actors, producers, directors live here. So their children as well. So the community is quite artistic. So, and I felt like that would be really good. And it was. So
And it is.
And it is. So I think I started doing this speaker series talks, and my interest was also giving opportunity and platform to artists that didn't have representation in Los Angeles. And and I also wanted to show what kind of LA art world is today. It's so rich, it's so broad, we have so much going on here. And I think the first season we did highlight people, children, sorry, artists from diaspora artists. So we had Yemeni American artists, Egyptian American, Iranian American, African American. So it was like very interesting, I think, slice, very talented artists. And so I think it was kind of a great start, and I'm continuing doing different events. Sometimes there are panels, sometimes there are studio visits, but just
Are these available for just anyone to come and participate in, or is it specifically you have to be a club member?
That's a good question. I mean, it's open to everybody. Whenever I do events, I usually invite people also who are not members. I mean, we're also looking to do it in other places, such as Pepperdine University. I think the sense of community for me is important. So I'm trying to engage more local universities and any organizations that are interested, really. So we'll do some there. I think with the talks we might do with the museum. But so far, I think the Soho House was just easy, and I've done it across different Soho houses. Yeah, and we might also do it in people's homes. I don't mind. It's actually quite nice and private. So who knows what's next?
Yeah, no, honestly, I like that because I know like they have garden walks through people's homes sometimes. I don't know if they do that anymore, but they used to, like when I was growing up, there were like 10
Yeah.
houses in that one day they'd open and you could go walk through the 10 gardens and go see and stuff.
It's very interesting how people live, right? Because I'm like living with art is one thing. It's like just talking about it. It's very different. It's like going to artist studio.
Yeah, and
You
see
might
it.
never see it
No,
anywhere
also,
else.
and it is true. It's like the pieces that you display in your living room versus the pieces you display in your bedroom. I'm really lucky.
Yeah.
I have a lithograph print of an R. Crumb piece, which I was like, I was so excited that I got. He's one of my favorite cartoonists. And I display that in my bedroom. So only people that go in my bedroom get to see it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
so
it says a lot
interesting.
about who you are and where you draw your inspirations
100%.
from. And it is really a reflection of yourself, what you
Yeah.
display on your walls. It's very interesting when you think about it like that.
Yeah.
And how you choose to frame something, where
Yeah.
you choose to put it.
Absolutely. I think everything has meaning.
I mean, yeah. How often do you switch out your art?
Well, it depends. I mean, I've moved around the world, so I think for me it's interesting.
You've been in Russia, Dubai, Germany, United States,
East Coast, West
East
Coast.
Coast, West Coast. You've been so many places.
Yeah, so I think for me it's interesting, like to reflect when I move, how I get to place things different way. Like that I keep the core and then I switch around smaller pieces that are easy to install. Like things like this are not so easy to
Yeah, the big
find
oil
a wall
painting.
for. So I find
Oh,
yeah.
well, that's
Okay.
all the time that we have for today. Larissa, is there any final thought that you would like to share with the audience?
Oh yeah, you made me think about my favorite film, Some Like It Hot, and it's interesting how I was trying to share it with my kids. I remember we lived then in Washington D.C. and it was cold winter, and I said, "Why don't we watch this film?" My older son was 10, my little one was 6, and we turned it on and we were watching the film, and I could see my son's eyes also were lighting up because he was, of course, looking at Marilyn Monroe, but also there was a lot of music, and I loved the band, and I also realized that I love the band, so much because of that film. But what was interesting that year, he had to pick an instrument in his school, and he right away went for the saxophone, and you can see,
Wow.
we
It's
have
right
a
here
saxophone. Yeah,
next
it's
to the
right
chair,
here.
yeah.
He just brought it from his university. He was visiting home, and he loves saxophone, and he became, a pretty good saxophone player. And it's interesting, and I fell in love with instrument. I'm just saying how film can
It can inspire you to pick
inspire
up
us
something.
and make certain decisions in life. Yeah.
And it's like if you had not shown him that movie at that exact time, because it was when he was picking his instrument.
Yes.
If you had shown him
absolutely.
something completely different, he might have chosen the piano. He might have chosen the flute. He might have chosen the
Yeah.
guitar. It's like, who knows?
Yeah, he always thought saxophone was the coolest.
It's amazing. Because of Some Like It Hot. Because of Marilyn.
Of course.
Thank you to my guest, Larissa Kolesnikova, for coming on to the show. If you'd like to keep up with Larissa, you can do so on her website, locallyglobal.art, on Instagram at locallyglobalart. I'm Gala Avery, and this has been The Gala Show. The Gala Show is brought to you by Avery.com. This episode was executive produced by Roger Avery and produced by Gala Avery. Music composed by Andy Milburn. As always, I'm your host, Gala Avery. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. Despite me sharing the same last name with this charity, I don't have any affiliation with it, besides the fact that the issue is very near and dear to my heart. Did you know that in the United States, 2.7 million children currently have a parent in prison, and it's estimated that 10 million children have experienced parental incarceration at some point in their lives? I was one of these kids, and as an adult, I am really grateful to be able to give back to Project Avery. Their mission is to build leadership from within by supporting community through programs such as mentoring and outdoor education, and also to remove the stigma surrounding having a parent that's incarcerated. You don't have to feel alone. If you know a kid who could use these resources or would like to donate money or time to the charity, please go to Project Avery, that's AVARY.org, to check out what this amazing charity is all about. Again, that's projectavery.org. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart.